And joining us on the line, Shannon Ross, mate, welcome.
Thanks, Mitch. Thanks for having me.
Now, I am super excited to see you finally get the recognition you deserve because, mate, you've been at this for 12 years. How does it feel to finally get that UFC contract signed and you get to step in the octagon?
Yeah, it's massive. It's like the validation of all the hard work and all that time and effort and dedication and getting that signature on a fight contract here at home for 284 in Perth is yeah, it's massive. It means the world.
Now, did it, so like you've won titles, right? But
Yeah.
up until about two, three fights ago, you had that tough loss against Steven Usyk, who, in his own right, will probably end up in the UFC as well. Did like what does a loss do to you in that stage of your career? At I think you're 33 now, so you would have been about 31, 32. Did it
Yeah.
derail you at all?
No, not at all. Not that one. Not really. Not any losses have really derailed me at all. It's not who I am as a person, and that's not really how I think. Um, the things that were derailing me was a little bit due to the pandemic and COVID related issues and not being able to get fights and that sort of aspect. Um, Other than that, yeah, it's always back to the drawing board, and on any given night, anyone can sort of win a fight. So on my behalf of for that fight, I was probably not the best prepared, and coming off a month holiday in Japan, I sort of probably shouldn't have fought. But as fighters, that's what we do, and we sort of try to push ourselves to the most extreme extents. And yeah, that one I didn't come away with the win, but we got back to the drawing board, and here we are now.
Are you noticing on the regional scene, are guys starting to pick their opponents a little bit more, or is everyone just willing to fight anyone?
Um, yeah, it's definitely like that a bit these days. Like obviously when I first started fighting 12, 13 years ago, you didn't have a choice because there was no one to pick. You got an offer and you went and fought that guy. And like for me, my second or third fight, I was fighting guys with 15 fights who were well known high level Australian pros at the top of their ranks. And that's how I sort of come up through the early days. And yeah, now there's a little bit of picking and choosing and sitting on the sidelines waiting for those perfect fights and the ones that sort of elevate people and get them to where they want to go. But yeah, I guess it's just a part of the game.
Now, when it comes to pay the money on the regional scene, have you seen it change over the last 12 years?
No, not at all. It's on it's actually on par with exactly how it was. Fought for my first Australian title, probably on Nitro. I got paid the same as defending my last Australian titles 4, 5, 6 years apart. So there's been no growth in the pay and the in that aspect of things. But I think what's starting to happen is the sport is becoming that more mainstream and that more look to sport for advertisement of companies and sponsorship sort of
Yeah.
possibilities. So if you're smart, if you're business orientated in that aspect, you can sort of bring sponsors in and try to get a little bit more financial support that way.
I guess that kind of answers my next question of like, how do you think guys can get more money, how we can get more money into the sport on the regional scene?
Yeah, obviously first it comes from our regional promoters and who they can bring in as big sponsors. Like we all know the NRL has the Telstra Premier League, and Telstra's obviously paying them millions of dollars, and that funnels back down into clubs and players and all that sort of thing. So I think the first thing is their promoters can build big sponsorships and stuff like that, and then that can funnel back down into fighter pay. But yeah, you got to be smart. You got to be out there, and you got to be a business now. Like for fighters coming up, they got to look at themselves as their own business. So when you do promote yourself well, you can get these other businesses to jump on board and use them as financial support in that sense.
You have actually you've run your like social media very well over the last couple of years. Speaking of acting like a business, to the point where you even got a nice little hashtag going. Well, it was TD4UFC, I think it
Yeah,
was.
correct. Yeah,
And
yeah.
how,
So
yeah, how many people got on board? Like, how? What's the brainchild behind that?
Yeah, like obviously we want to be in the face of the UFC and trying to like I've never had anything. I've never been afraid to say that's where I want to fight and that's where I want to be. So if you don't tell them and you don't show them, you're not going to get picked, right? You're not going to. They're not even going to know you're going to exist. Especially us guys down here in Australia. We're so far away. We're on the we're almost in a different world. So it's like to stay pushing and stay relevant, and obviously your fights speak the most, but to be in their eyes is a big thing. And for guys coming up, yeah, you gotta somehow stay like in that limelight sort of aspect if that's where you want to go.
Now, you ultimately got into the UFC through this very new invention to the game, Dana White Contender Series. How did that fight become about? Because it's essentially for people that don't know, it's essentially like like a tryout. And if
Correct.
you win or you perform, we'll go into that a little bit later on. You might get a UFC contract and you might get to fight in the UFC. So, how did the technical tryout even come about?
Yeah, correct. So it is. It's a tryout. It's a job interview, if you per se. It's probably the coolest, most epic job interview you could ever do on this planet. Like, there's no other place you can go try to secure a job by fist fighting another human being. So it's a pretty cool way to do it. So 2019, when Rob Whittaker and Israel Adesanya first fought in Melbourne, I went down to Melbourne, had a sit down with Mick Maynard, and they wanted to sign me back then.
Oh, wow.
And then so had a good sit down and a good chat, and then we are mapping some stuff out. And then obviously early 2020, COVID kicked off, and that sort of put a big halt on everything because you would know the Australian COVID restrictions and
Yeah.
our quarantine and our shutdowns and our we were so it was so controlled over here and it was so over the top that they pretty much said like, dude, we're not touching anyone from Australia right now.
Yeah.
So it was like, man, that was like a little bit soul crushing because after 11, 12 years, I was like, I'm almost like I'm there. I'm talking to
Yeah.
Mick. I'm having a sit down. And then to get told like, well, you're just going to have to wait until this sort of all pans out and fizzes out, was a bit demoralizing. But like I've always been, just back on the track and keep working and keep progressing. And we took a fight in Abu Dhabi with my manager Daniel Rubenstein from Ruby Sports. He teed that up, and that was on UAE Warriors. And then that was like I fought a guy coming straight out of Contender Series, so he would have been in one of the first or second seasons. So
Okay.
I put him away, and then Danny pretty much said like, look, if we can get another fight or another two back home and cement some good another win, another two good wins, like we'll be able to get into the UFC. And then obviously he also said we could try the track of the Contender Series as well when they come back around the next season. And then obviously the last previous season to the one I fought on was obviously during COVID, so that was pretty much like, yeah, we're not doing it. Um, so that was sort of a shutout there. And then at the start of the year, I took a fight against Sean Etchell. We were going to fight for the flyweight title on Eternal again. And literally, like at the start of the year, it's funny because I was ready to hang it up. Then at the start of the year, I said to like my wife, like, look, I'm ready to. I think I've give it all. I've given it my
Like
all.
retire.
Yeah, like I
Wow.
was pretty much ready to like because of the COVID thing, right? Like I got ready for a couple different fights, and then it was like lockdown. The event's
Yeah.
cancelled. We can't go ahead with it. So I just wasted 8 weeks taking time off work, losing money, don't
Yeah.
even get the fight. So then at the start of the year come around, it was like early mid January, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm done. Like we don't know when we don't know when COVID's going to finish. We don't know when the world's getting back to normal. We don't know what's going on. I was like, I think I'm done. I think I'm going to start. Like I give it my all. I'm happy with what I've accomplished, and like obviously at that point, and then she just said to me like, "No, nah, you're not allowed to like retire yet." She's like, everyone else is like you fight and you sacrifice and you do the training, but we also sacrifice your time and the kids miss you and like all that sort of. So that made sense to me. And I said, all right, well, like, what do we do? She said, just book another fight, book whatever fight you can get. We spoke to Cam from Eternal. The Sean Etchell match come up. That's obviously that fight excites me. That
Yeah.
got me like really pumped. Sean's like I actually really like Sean. He's a good kid. Obviously very highly skilled. He was the bantamweight champion at the time. I'm pretty certain he wanted to come down to flyweight, back to flyweight, and I was super super happy and eager to welcome him there. So we signed the fight, and literally like maybe a week after, like the world's fully open and back up, it's like, yeah, there's no international travel bans and there's no quarantine and when you get home anymore. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, Denny rings me and says, hey, mate, I've got you a contract on the Contender Series. Like, it's all ready to go. They want to fly you over in May, do media, do all your medical, do check everything over, and then you'll be fighting in August. And I was like, man, it's just crazy how the world pushes you to the
Yeah.
brink of almost quitting to next minute giving you what you've been working for your whole life.
Yeah, it's like that meme on the internet where the guy stops digging and then the diamond's literally
Yeah,
right there.
exactly, man. That's exactly how I try to explain this to people. Like, right when you're ready to go, like ready to give it all up, someone will allow and give you that opportunity to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, in the moment though, you feel like you're like, because insanity is that whole like doing the
Yeah,
same thing, expecting a different result. And so in that moment, you're like, nah, I'm sacrificing everything. And what if? Because some guys do keep going, and
yep,
it doesn't pan out. I mean, you would know a fair few guys that it just hasn't worked out for.
100%. Yeah, you like it's a very small percentage of guys that really do make the UFC and that top echelon of the sport. And I've seen, yeah, I could say hundreds of guys that have that's their dream and that's where they want to go, and it's just they've slogged it out for years and years and years, and then yeah, just the stars don't line up. So for me, luckily we come around away with a Contender Series contract, and then obviously the performance there got me over the line to get a
Yeah.
late contract in hospital. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, mate, this is one of the things that people either don't know and 100% should. Many guys that get on the Dana White Contender Series, they might not like they'll win their fight, but it's boring, or
yeah,
they're just giving out enough contracts that day and they don't get a contract. You actually lost your fight and got a
yeah.
contract. Explain how that is possible.
I think off the top of my head, I haven't done all like looked over all the seasons, but I'm one of I think the only or one of very few to get a contract after losing. So that's a pretty surreal feeling to obviously have Dana come in the cage after the fight, and like what he was saying to me was like, man, he was saying like, you're right there, brother. Like he goes, that was a epic, insane fight. And he goes, that's what we run this Contender Series for. That's what we do that because we want to showcase the next big stars and the next exciting guys. And he goes, you come in here and you laid it all out on the line. He goes, you got hurt in the first, you could have been safe and like stole the second and third and maybe walk away for split decision. But he goes, that's not you. He goes, you went out. He goes, you tried to put him away. He goes, we'll be chatting, mate. He goes, maybe one more fight, we'll get you back in. Like we'll chat.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. And then yeah, obviously everything that I went through, like leading up to the fight and fight week itself, and obviously going straight from the fight to hospital to get the surgery. And then I think them realizing how I fought in the condition I was in, they were like, man, give this dude a contract. Hey, like if anyone's earned anything, this guy's fucking earned a chance. So
For those who don't know, you had was a emergency surgery because you had acute appendicitis. Did you know going in to the
it's funny, man, because like as fighters, we try to push all this stuff to the back of our head, right? Like, nah, my stomach's not sore, I'm just hungry. Like, nah, it's not that, it's not this. It's so like even before I left Australia, I was sort of like getting a bit of a sore stomach. And like it's funny looking back now, there was like about 6 weeks out from the fight, I actually drove myself to the hospital because I had real bad stomach pain. And then I sat in the hospital in the emergency room for like 4 hours, and there was so many people there. And then I just got up and left because I was like, I'm not waiting any longer.
Oh,
And then the stomach pain went away. So like I got through camp, got all that done. I don't know what it was. It could have been like the start of it, but and then yeah, obviously fight week and having that stomach pain, and I've got to cut weight soon. I'm on a low calorie diet right now. I'm not putting a lot of fuel in my body, so I'm just thinking
yeah.
my stomach's sore. I'm hungry. I need food. I want to eat some food. Like that's all I'm thinking. And then we cut weight, rehydrate, feel real good. The next, like the morning of the fight, we have like a little hit out and a warm up. And I had Ben Ewan there, Ben 10. He
Yeah.
was previous UFC flyweight. So he was in the States at the time. So I flew him out to Vegas and got him to come out and just do the fight week with me and have someone my size there and a body who of a good caliber and someone that's sort of familiar with the whole process of the UFC week sort of thing. Um, and we are warming up, and he put a body triangle on me on my
Oh,
back and squeezed it down on this right side, and I got a super sharp pain. And like I got him to let it go, and I hopped up. At first, I thought it was like my lower rib sort of like popped off a bit
yeah.
from the body triangle, and then I moved around. I went, "Oh, I'm all good." I was like, "Oh, we'll keep warming up." But I think that pressure, that sort of triangle squeeze on my abdomen, was the appendix rupturing. So I think that's when it ruptured, or the morning of the fight. And then, yeah, obviously, I've still got a job to do. I can't. I'm already in Vegas. I'm not letting this chance slip. So yeah, chill out
You know,
in the day, get ready for the
people,
fight.
people die, right? I just like
Yeah,
people
well,
die from that.
yeah, I didn't know at the time, right? So it's funny because like post fight, we go to the hospital and we get a check out, and then I was all good post fight. So yeah, they sent us home, had some food, and I woke up the next morning, like I had a burger and some wings or something from where we were staying at the fighter hotel. And I woke up in the morning and my stomach was huge. It was like bloated, like real big. And I was like, man, my body didn't like that burger. Like I was like, Jesus Christ. And then at first I actually thought I did what Rob Whittaker did, like had an obstructed bowel because it was up like my stomach was so big, it was just and I was like, maybe that food hasn't gone through. And then we waited and waited a couple of hours, and then like I started getting the shakes, and I was trembling, and I was in bed, and my one of my coaches, he said, all right, like that's enough, we'll get you down to the hospital, we'll get you checked out. So we went in there, got a CT scan, and the doctor that does like the UFC events, we were at the same hospital he runs. So he come back and he goes, mate, that was a crazy fight last night. He's like wrapped, he's like, you bloody Australians are mad. He's going on about it, loving it. And also, man, I'll love to chat to you about the fight, but I feel like I'm dying. Like, can you help me? So yeah, get a CT scan. He comes back, goes, mate, you've got a ruptured appendix. He goes, that's bloody insane. And then, like, obviously getting back to it, yeah, I didn't know people died, but the nurse come in and she said, oh, do you know Houdini? And I was like, oh, the dude that does like the crazy escapes and like all that sort of. I said, yeah, I sort of know him. She goes, yeah, he died from appendicitis, and I was like, whoa, like that's when it sort of hit me and like shocked me, and then yeah, straight in for the surgery and get it fixed up. And yeah,
Oh,
wild ride.
what's funny is that sums you up completely. It's just like it doesn't matter what you're going through, you're gonna show up, you're gonna put on fight of the night. And that's what I'm excited to see you now do that on the world stage. Now, mate, we're almost out of time. I know you're a very busy man, but before I let you go, I just wanted to ask you this question.
Yep.
After this is all said and done, how does Shannon Ross want to be remembered?
And to be honest, I just want to be remembered as the guy that give it all. He was a proud family man and looked after his wife and kids, and yeah, chased his dream with full intent and didn't take any backward steps and didn't dismiss any challenges and just went forward and chased and tried to achieve everything he had his goals set to and his mind on. So yeah.
Awesome. Shannon Ross, mate, like I said, thanks for taking the time. I can't wait to see you really shine. And please don't fight through any more illnesses.
Yeah, well, I can't catch appendicitis twice, so we're looking good for this one.
Love it, mate. Thank you.